Dr. Arya Sterling pressed her forehead against the cool, transparent alloy of the Astra Fortuna's observation dome. Below her, the planet Cindarius Phae stretched out like a living tapestry, jagged obsidian spires slicing through rolling fields of bioluminescent fungi, rivers of emerald mist coiling between basalt ridges. Her heart fluttered, equal parts exhilaration and apprehension. At 13 years old, she was the youngest xenolinguist ever commissioned by the United Earth Coalition. Every beaten path in human language had bowed to her brilliance. Every arcane dialect from Martian glyphs to Jovian harmonics lay at her feet. But this was uncharted territory. A soft chime announced the Fortuna's descent. The observation deck filled with a low hum as the ship's grav drives phased out of slipstream. Crew members in sleek blue uniforms scurried to consoles, eyes darting between external sensors and the live feed of Cindarius's surface. Captain Ree shot Arya a reassuring nod. "Ready?" he asked. She swallowed and nodded in return. Moments later, the hatch hissed open and a ramp extended. The air that drifted aboard was heavier than Earth's, tinged with a faint metallic tang. As she stepped onto Cindarian soil, Arya felt its subtle vibration, an undercurrent of power pulsing through the planet like a slumbering beast. She tightened, her fingers around the handheld quantum decoder, grateful for its constant hum. This device had translated uncountable tongues, yet she suspected it would falter here. A thunderous flap of wings split the air. Dark shapes wheeled overhead. Draken warships, colossal living vessels of scale and sinew, their underbellies glowing with thermic vents. Arya's breath caught. Captain Ree raised a ceremony glove, and from a hatch in the nearest Draken vessel descended a retinue of warriors, towering figures clad in interlocking bands of obsidian armor, wings folded against their backs like sculpted fins. At their forefront strode high worm Zalthor. His scales gleamed like polished basalt, and his eyes, two molten orbs, fixed on Arya with an uneasy mixture of curiosity and contempt. He carried no weapon that she could see, yet the hum of latent energy around him set every hair on her arm standing. Zalthor's voice rolled out in a low, guttural timbre, each syllable vibrating the very air. The Fortuna's universal translator stuttered and spat back a broken phrase, "Welcome, human." A ripple of derisive laughter thundered through the Draken ranks. Arya coughed lightly to clear her throat. "I am Dr. Arya Sterling, xenolinguist ambassador from Earth," she announced, projecting calm. She held up her decoder. "I come in peace and in curiosity. I wish to learn your language." A snort of amusement echoed across the landing site. One of the lesser Draken, a towering figure with horned frills, knelt mockingly. "Curiosity?" he rasped, voice twisting like tearing cloth. "The mind of a child cannot grasp worm magic. Your machines will break under its power." At that, another Draken, smaller, almost drakeling in comparison, produced a crystalline orb. It pulsed with shifting patterns of light. "Test her, Zalthor," he urged. "Let us see if she can decode the Ember sequence." Murmurs of approval rippled through the Draken. Captain Ree stepped forward, but Arya placed a slender hand on his arm. "Let me," she whispered. Turning toward the Draken scholars, she lifted her decoder and began scanning the orb's surface. Its refracted wavelengths, the subsonic hum at its core, the microtonal oscillations that danced across its facets. Already her mind raced, parsing patterns as if they were familiar. The Ember sequence, the legendary triadic cadence woven into Draken speech, glimmered at the edge of her perception. A Draken scholar snarled, "Cease your meddling, human. You'll only offend the worm spirit." Arya's pulse hammered in. her ears. She steadied herself, inhaled the metallic-scented air and focused. Even if her decoder failed, she would rely on her own mind, on instincts honed through years of linguistic immersion. She observed how the Draken warbled around her, low gutturals punctuated by high-pitched flares, tonal swings that skated across emotional registers. Each vibration carried meaning beyond mere words. Yet when she opened her mouth to respond, doubt flickered. Would they even understand? Zalthor's gaze bore into her, his wings shifting in impatience. The assembled Draken leaned forward, expectant and mocking in equal measure. Arya straightened. "Please," she said, voice echoing strangely in the open air. "Show me the true song of your scales." The word song hung between them, an invitation and a challenge. For a heartbeat silence reigned. Then Zalthor spread his wings, and the cavernous thrum of his voice rolled out like distant thunder. "You will perish within your own curiosity, child," he rumbled. "But entertain us. Speak." Arya closed her eyes. The obsidian towers. Around her, the zigzagging mountain ridges, the carrion fires burning in distant caves, faded from her awareness. All that remained was the vibrant tapestry of vibration, waiting to be unraveled. And as she listened more intently than ever before, a spark ignited in her mind, lighting the path toward the impossible. In the heart of mockery, under the watchful eyes of the Draken, Arya Sterling discovered her true purpose. The corridors of the Draken citadel were carved from living obsidian, pulsing with faint veins of bioluminescent emerald. Each wall hummed with resonant energy, an ever-present reminder of the Draken's mastery over vibrations. Arya Sterling followed her escort, two silent warriors whose scales clicked softly with each step. Their wings brushed the ceiling, stirring eddies of mist that coiled around Arya's ankles like curious serpents. They arrived at the great double doors of the Hall of Echoes. At their center, the doors bore a relief of interlocking Draken glyphs, 3 dragon heads circling a central ember. As the doors swung open, the chamber beyond seemed to swallow sound. Arya's own footsteps faded into a distant echo, and every whispered word she had rehearsed trembled in her throat. Inside, the hall stretched vast and oval, its high vaults rippling with living sound. Rows of Drakeling scholars flanked a long dais, and atop it sat the Council of Scales. Dozens of towering Draken, their horns honed to crystalline points, eyes glittering like hot coals. Between each counselor floated hollow crystals projecting, swirling runes that shifted in time with the counselors' guttural conversations. High Worm Zalthor rose from his throne of pulsar stone. His mantle of thermic feathers flared, sending sibilant gusts across the hall. "Young human," he intoned, each word cracking like distant thunder. "You have dared to breach our sanctum. Speak now, or suffer the price of ignorance." Chorus of jeering warbles surged from the council. One ancient Draken leaned forward, its horned crest brushing the holographic runes. "She will choke on the ember sequence," it growled. "Her puny decoders are no match for worm magic." Arya stepped onto the dais, clutching her quantum decoder to her chest. The device flickered, its display struggling to parse the hall's complex acoustics. She shut her eyes, focusing inward. The mocking laughter around her swelled into a cacophony, but within it lay structure. A triplet of subsonic pulses, a crescendo of metallic clicks, a descending tonal slide. The ember sequence, she realized, was being woven live, a challenge laid bare. One of the Drakeling scholars produced a crystalline orb carved with shifting fractals. Its surface danced with tiny spiraling light eddies. "Decode this," the scholar hissed, Identify the pattern, human. Then speak its true name. Arya raised her decoder toward the orb. The device's sensors cast flickering algorithms across her features, but each scan returned a cascade of errors. The orb's frequencies modulated faster than any standard codebook could follow, and its resonances splintered the decoder's quantum grid. Behind her, a Draken guard let out a low chuckle. You see? No device can tame worm sound. A counselor, beside him, banged its fist on the dais, rattling hollow crystals and sending prismatic shards across the floor. Arya's chest tightened, but she refused to yield. She closed her eyes again and let her mind sift through the hall's lingering echoes. The council's warbles, the orb's spinning circuits, even her own racing heartbeat. In this maelstrom, she found a thread, a rhythmic pulse that repeated every 17 milliseconds like the heartbeat of the planet itself. She visualized it as a spiraling coil, mapping it onto the decoder's spectral analyzer. With trembling fingers, she adjusted the machine's filters, isolating that 17-millisecond pulse. The orb's fractal light stabilized, and for a fleeting instant, Arya glimpsed the hidden pattern. A ternary progression of tones, low, mid, high, interleaved with ornamental glissandi. The Ember sequence. But as soon as she thought she had it, the orb shifted again, warping its pattern into a new, more intricate weave. A low rumble of amusement rolled through the hall. The Draken thrived on complexity, every solution they saw as an invitation to deepen the puzzle. Cornu Drakus, the chief torturer scholar, extended a gauntlet hand and unleashed a series of sonic tendrils, whispering strands of sound that lanced toward Arya like invisible whips. The decoder's screens flickered violently, and a sharp pain blossomed in Arya's temples as the tendrils probed for weakness. She staggered, but caught herself, on the edge of the dais. "Stop," she gasped, voice cracking. The hall fell silent, stunned by her outburst. Zalthor's molten eyes narrowed. "You overstep," he muttered, though there was a flicker of respect in his gaze. "Even Wyrm magic bows to control, yet you wield noise like a blade." Arya pressed a hand to her head, willing the pain to subside. She began, but the echoes of the sonic tendrils still reverberated in her ears, warping her speech. The words that emerged were broken, a hodgepodge of Draken and human phonetics. The council erupted in furious howls. "Fools," Arya hissed, frustration tipping into defiance. "You mock what you cannot fathom." With sudden resolve, she backed away from the dais and stumbled toward the chamber exit. The Draken guards hesitated, surprised by her boldness. In her quarters, that night Arya sat before a holo projector, replaying every recording from the Hall of Echoes. She paused and rewound the moments when her decoder failed, highlighting each spike in frequency and every fractal warp of the orb. She overlaid her own heartbeat and vocal attempts, creating a multi-layered map of interactions. Captain Ree appeared, in the doorway, concern etched on his face. "Arya, you should rest. Tomorrow's another day, perhaps a less hostile environment." She offered him a wan smile. "Rest won't solve this, Captain. The Draken speak in layers, structural resonance, emotive harmonics, ritual cadence. Their language is alive." She pointed to a spiraling graph of frequency versus time. "These nodes, they're not random. They correspond to emotional inflections. If I can chart their patterns across contexts, maybe I can predict the next variation." Ree nodded slowly. "Then I'll give you every hour you need. We came here for this purpose." Alone again, Arya sank into her chair and closed her eyes. The hum of her hololab faded into a deeper pulse, the echo of the planet. She smiled, sensing that beneath the scorn of the Draken lay an invitation, the ultimate linguistic challenge. Arya's quarters were a sanctuary of silent determination. Surrounded by hollow displays and tumbling spectral graphs, she replayed every echo from the Hall of Echoes. The crystalline orb's ever-shifting ember sequence haunted her thoughts, its ternary patterns teasing the limits of her decoder's quantum grid. Hours passed like minutes as she overlaid frequency analyses with emotional annotations gleaned from Draken vocal registers. Anger, mockery, curiosity, awe. At last, a pattern emerged, a hidden cadence woven through every insult, every scoff, every challenge. She wiped sleep from her eyes and stood, pacing the length of the chamber. The key lay not in brute computation, but in resonance. The Draken did not merely speak, they sang with the tremors of their planet. Arya recalled the bioluminescent veins trailing through Cindarius's obsidian mountains, living conduits of vibrational energy. If she could tap into those frequencies, perhaps she could speak their language not as data, but as living sound. Settling at her workbench, she retrieved the prototype modular resonance amplifier, a spiderweb of crystalline filaments and microcoils, designed to translate ambient vibrations into structured tonal output. With meticulous care, she reconfigured its nodes. The low-band transducers were tuned to 17 millisecond pulses she had isolated, the mid-range filters calibrated to the orb's ornamental glissandi, the high-range oscillators aligned with the Draken's signature subsonic flares. She activated the amplifier. A soft hum grew, then blossomed into a chord resonant with the hidden pulse of Cindarius itself. The holographs on her wall shifted, tracing spiraling loops of harmonic convergence. Arya's heart raced. This was the Ember sequence, magnified, made intelligible. Guided by intuition, she spoke the first, a fragment aloud, a low-rounded thraw. Her voice hovered uncertainly in the charged air. The amplifier caught the sound, amplified it through its crystal mesh, and fed it back. An echo amplified tenfold, pure and crystalline. Encouraged, she finished the phrase, Khan. The hum stuttered, then cleared into a single resonant note that vibrated through the room's walls. Arya paused, breathless. On her console, the analyzer displayed perfect alignment. The 6 elements of the Ember sequence locked in harmony. She replayed the recording, her voice now encoded in true dragon's tongue. Moments later, Captain Ree burst in. Arya, we're needed immediately. The Council demands another demonstration. She nodded, securing her amplifier in a padded case. As they stepped into the corridor, the ambient hum of the Citadel seemed to pulse in recognition. Word of her breakthrough had already spread. Draken scholars lined the halls, their eyes alight with caution and curiosity rather than derision. In the Hall of Echoes, the Council of Scales awaited. Zalthor's gaze was unreadable, but his wings twitched with anticipation. Arya raised the amplifier to her throat and activated it. She inhaled deeply, feeling the dragon magic in her bones, and spoke. Thrakon. The sound rolled through the chamber like a single perfect breath. The floating hollow runes stilled. The dragon guards lowered their claws. A stunned silence settled before a low, reverent murmur began to ripple through the council. Arya met Zalthor's molten gaze and offered a small, confident smile. She had unlocked the Ember sequence. And with that key, the Draken's were. The echo of Arya's inaugural dragon syllable still vibrated in the vaulted chamber when the translator drakes, the small wingless scholars, fluttered forward. Their crystal-throated voices, once mere aids to the quantum decoders, now carried clear resonant meaning. Arya watched as each hollow crystal recording of her phrase Thrakon was re-rendered into a melodic human translation. I understand the song of your scales. A collective hush swept over the hall of echoes. Even the flickering runes above the dais paused mid-spiral, as if frozen by astonishment. Highworm Zalthor leaned forward, his molten eyes reflecting newfound curiosity rather than contempt. You understand? He breathed, each word deep as a chasm. The murmur among the counselors rose again, this time tinged with wonder. One elder Draken, its horns etched with centuries of wisdom, tapped a claw against its chest, a gesture of respect. Speak again, child of Earth. Heart pounding, Arya activated her modular resonance amplifier once more. Her voice, sung through its crystalline filaments, became a seamless bridge between human intent and Draken harmonic. She whispered a phrase she had painstakingly crafted overnight, a greeting composed of layered courtesies and poetic imagery. Velkrin Thaor, Drakariel Unthes. The translator Drakes paused, their eyes widening. Then, softly, May your wings soar on the breath of starlight, guardians of ancient flame. A palpable ripple of emotion rippled through the chamber. The Draken whispered among themselves. The phrase was not only correctly rendered in dragon's tongue, but conveyed an understanding of their cultural reverence for flight, flame, and cosmic heritage. Arya's words had woven respect, flattery, and the spark of alliance into a single melodic cadence. Zalthor stepped down from the dais, his great form dwarfing the translator Drake's. Each footfall echoed with the power of tectonic plates shifting. He extended a massive taloned hand hovering inches from Arya's shoulder, a test of her intent. She held her breath, recalling the legends of Draken who crushed pretenders with a mere gesture of disdain. Instead, his claws retracted, and the scales along his forearm trembled in what could only be Draken approval. You speak with the fire of poets and the logic of philosophers, he rumbled. His voice, once a hammer of authority, softened into something like admiration. Show us more of your tongue, human. Tell us of your world beyond the stars. Arya nodded, summoning her courage. She described Earth's twin oceans, vast tapestries of liquid sapphire shimmering under golden skies, and the human capacity for art, music, and mathematics that spoke in universal patterns. Each sentence she crafted was sheathed in dragons, resonance ensuring her amplifier translated not just phonemes but the heartbeat of meaning itself. As she spoke, the hall transformed. Hollow crystals descended, projecting verdant forests and soaring gulls. Crystal lenses refracted images of human architecture and gentle waterfalls. Draken scholars leaned forward, their scaled heads bowed in fascination. The translator Drakes, classical robes, woven from silken ember fibers, stirred in the charged air, as if stirred by the stories themselves. When Arya finished, a hush settled once more. Then, one by one, the counselors unfurled their wings in a grand, synchronous display, a gesture of welcome and shared wonder. Zalthor's voice cut through the silence. No human has ever spoken dragon's tongue with such depth of feeling. You have not only cracked our language, you have touched our soul. A ripple of applause, an impossibly soft crystalline applause, reverberated through the chamber. Captain Ree, standing behind Arya, allowed himself a rare smile. In that moment, the gulf between Earth and Sindarius the Five collapsed beneath the weight of genuine understanding. As the translator Drakes led Arya to an alcove of arcane tomes, ancient scrolls inscribed on living metal, she realized that the mockery of moments past had been replaced with something far richer, the first strains of a shared future. And in those melodic folds of her newfound dragon speech, Arya Sterling heard not only the echo of history, but the promise of stories yet to be. In the wake of Arya's stunning demonstration, the Draken citadel thrummed with renewed purpose. The Council of Scales, once rigid in protocol, now convened in open dialogue with their human envoy. Crystal hollow displays lined the grand corridor, outside the Hall of Echoes, each one streaming live translations of Arya's discussions, an unprecedented gesture of trust. That morning, Arya was summoned to the Ember Throne, the heart of Draken governance. The throne room was carved from a single massive geode of pulsar stone, its inner veins glowing with burnished orange light. At its center lay the Ember Throne itself, a dais of living metal shaped like overlapping wings, heated from within by the planet's core. Counselors gathered around, their immense forms half encircling Arya like ancient sentinels. High Worm Zalthor rose to greet her. "Today," he declared in dragon's tongue, each word rolling like molten lava, "we forge a covenant between our peoples, but to bind our worlds, we must exchange not only words but melodies of our souls." From the council's flank, a Drakeling scholar unfurled a scroll of iridescent parchment. On it were inscribed the Song of Embers, an ancient ritual melody, said to seal alliances in worm magic. Its notation was not in ink but in wavering pulses of encoded resonance, impossible for any translator to render directly. Arya studied the scroll under the glow of the pulsar stone, her mind racing to interpret its flow. "This song," she whispered, "is woven from the heartbeat of Sindarius itself, the rhythm of its molten rivers and the cadence of its volcanic storms." Zalthor bowed his great head. "If you can sing it alongside us, child of Earth, you will bind our fates in harmony." Arya nodded and activated her resonance amplifier. She placed her fingers lightly on the living metal of the throne's winged armrests, feeling the ember pulse thrumming beneath the surface. Then she began to sing, channeling the Song of Embers through her voice and her machine in unison. First her notes quavered, earthbound human tones struggling to rise. But with each phrase she attuned more deeply, matching the rumble of the geode, inflecting her pitch to mimic the hiss of spouting magma, weaving in the faint hiss of scalding steam. The amplifier's crystals glowed with every perfect transient, and the living metal beneath her fingertips pulsed in response. Around her the council joined in. Their voices, sonorous, multi-layered warbles, spiraled through the throne room in majestic counterpoint. Wings unfurled, scales shimmered, and the air vibrated with collective worm power. Drakeling scholars intoned low harmonics that rose through Arya's amplified melody like supportive pillars of sound. As the final chord faded, the pulsar stone's glow surged, bathing the chamber in a wave of radiant light. The ground vibrated, in resonance, and for a heartbeat, all was still. Then Zalthor spoke, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard it. "By your voice and our song, the covenant of embers is sealed." He extended a clawed hand, this time in genuine fellowship. Arya placed her hand in his. The shock of their joined resonance rippled through her arm, filling her with warmth and awe. Around them, hollow crystals descended, projecting the covenant. Glyph. Interlaced human and Draken symbols circling a central ember. A soft chorus of voices, both human and Draken, whispered the covenant words in perfect unity. Later, as the sun of Sindarius Thifim sank beneath obsidian spires, Arya and Captain Ree stood on a balcony overlooking the citadel's lava-lit streets. Draken emissaries mingled freely with human scientists, their scales gleaming under the molten glow. Arya exhaled, her heart still thrumming with the Song of Embers. "I never imagined I'd sing alongside a dragon," she mused. Ree smiled. "Not just any dragon. A people who once dismissed you as a child have now made you their equal partner." She turned back to the citadel, its towers alive with light and song. Tomorrow, we begin sharing knowledge. Medical advances in exchange for mastery of resonance. We'll build translators that sing instead of just speak. We'll compose new melodies, Earth-Draken symphonies that echo across the stars. Ree placed a hand on her shoulder. With you leading, I believe anything is possible. As twilight deepened, Arya closed her eyes and listened. To the distant rumble of dragon wings, to the soft hum of human machinery, and to the living resonance of a world reborn in harmony. The alliance was not merely written in treaties, but in the songs they would sing together, a new melody for the ages. Dawn broke over Sindarius' thigh in molten hues of amber and violet, the sky alive with drifting ember clouds. In the courtyard before the Hall of Echoes, a great assembly of Draken and humans gathered for the departure ceremony. Counselors in crystal-lit mantles stood alongside Earth's ambassadors in silver-trimmed uniforms. At the center, Arya Sterling, her cheeks alight with both pride and wistfulness, prepared to board the Astra Fortuna for her journey home. High Worm Zalthor descended, the marble steps to meet her, his wings, once spread in formidable display, now folded in solemn grace. He presented Arya with a living scale, a shimmering sample of Draken biometal, engraved with the final verse of the Covenant song. "Carry this with you," he intoned, in dragon's tongue, his voice a low, warm current. "It binds our worlds forever." Arya accepted the scale, feeling its subtle pulse against her palm. She pressed it to her amplifier and spoke the verse back in perfect harmony. Kylthur, Irith Pillay, until the stars sing together again. Around her, voices lifted on wings and wind, repeating the phrase in unison, a final chorus that reverberated through the citadel's living stone. As the Astra Fortuna's grav pad lowered, Arya turned to Captain Ree and the human delegation. "This is not an end," she said softly. "It's the first movement of a grand symphony." She smiled at the Draken scholars who had become her friends. Those who once mocked her now waved heartfelt farewells. Inside the observation dome, once more, Arya watched the citadel recede beneath her. On the hollow screen, Earth's Channel 1 news beamed live, Human-Draken Alliance sealed. Headlines scrolled beneath footage of Arya's speech, of city streets on Terra emblazoned with dragon lanterns. She felt the weight of history on her shoulders, and the exhilaration of possibility. In the weeks that followed, Arya spearheaded the first Earth-Draken Resonance Institute, an interstellar think tank where linguists, musicians, and engineers composed new languages and sonic architectures. Together, they built resonance bridges that translated the roar of a Draken wingbeat into harmonic data streams and human sonnets into living holograms of luminous flight. Years later, Arya Sterling, now celebrated as the harbinger of harmony, stood once again on Sindarius's obsidian cliffs, She released a songline of human flute tones up into the swirling emerald mists. From the haze, Draken wings returned her melody with deep, rolling replies. And in that timeless exchange, she knew their song would never end. For language, she had learned, is more than words. It is the heartbeat of worlds intertwined, echoing across